something of a joke. According to Johnson's new report, Page texted Strzok on September 2nd of 2016 about preparing talking points for then FBI Director James Comey because, quote, POTUS, meaning President Obama, wants to know everything we're doing. The senator's report alleges that the text, quote, raises additional questions about the type and extent of President Obama's personal involvement in the Clinton email scandal and the FBI investigation of it. Cue the conspiracy theories, cue the hyperbole, like the president calling it a bombshell. Keeping him honest, though, Johnson's report omits context that not only could provide an alternative explanation, a source familiar with the context says it in fact does exactly that. 3 days after Lisa Page sent that text, President Obama confronted Russian President Vladimir Putin about his meddling in the election. That would be one explanation of why President Obama was so interested in what the FBI was investigating. And that's what associates of Strzok and Page have told the Wall Street Journal, which put Senator Johnson on familiar ground when he was sounding the alarm about that secret society. Johnson said on Fox News, what this is all about is further evidence of corruption more than bias. He then went on to say corruption of the highest levels of the FBI, the secret society. We have an informant talking about a group that was holding secret meetings off-site. The frenzy he whipped up lasted for a couple days. Turned out, sources tell CNN, the full exchange had to do with a gag gift of Vladimir Putin-themed calendars. It was basically a joke. The whole idea of an informant seemed to disappear from Senator Johnson's mouth. When that was finally disclosed, Senator Johnson's response, when asked if it could have all been a joke, said, quote, it's a real possibility. In other words, the senator's last claim was bunk, and his latest one might be as well. We should note we asked Senator Johnson, of course, to come on the broadcast. We never heard back from his office. However, we're happy to welcome Democratic House Intelligence Committee member Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Congressman Himes, this is the second time Senator Johnson has made a claim alleging basically some conspiracy based on these text messages, only for it to turn out to be either not true or not in context. What's going on here?
Well, you know, it feels like just a week ago I was standing right here talking about how sad it was that a United States senator would trade his legacy and his dignity, his integrity, for this crazy idea of a secret society, which of course was, as you said, pretty rapidly debunked. Now, of course, he has done it again. And, you know, it's worth stepping back here so that the American people understand what is happening in this building. There are a number of individuals who will sacrifice any desire to be loyal to the truth, concern about their own credibility. Sadly, Chairman Nunes and the memo and the White House experience and the unmasking scandal, these are all faux scandals that are thrown out there for the sole purpose of causing some Americans to say, golly, I wonder whether the FBI is on the up and up, because at some point Bob Mueller may come through with some conclusions, and it's important to the president's supporters to have that uncertainty out there.
There probably won't be a rush, obviously, from Republicans to come out and talk about this publicly. I'm wondering, are you hearing anything from your Republican colleagues privately?
Well, yeah, a great deal of concern. And it's not just private, Anderson, as you know. Subsequent to the release of the Nunes memo, which, you know, the president characterized as vindicating him, a number of Republicans, including Trey Gowdy, who's not exactly thought of on my side of the aisle as, you know, kind of one of the guys who reaches across the aisle, he of the Benghazi investigation. He said this in no way vindicates the president or damages the Mueller investigation, in which he has 100% confidence. Speaker Ryan said that. 4 members of the Republican members of the Intelligence Committee did that. So quite publicly, a number of Republicans, not enough, but a number of Republicans are carefully questioning this daily effort to create a sense of whether, you know, I mean, Ron Johnson said it, corruption, all at the expense of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the fine people who work there.
Regarding the Democratic memo, we're expecting the White House to authorize the release of it by Friday. They say unless there's a grave threat to national security. Now, we don't know what, if anything, may be redacted. Is anything, in your opinion, less than a full release acceptable to you, or would you be okay with some redactions?
Well, to me, who probably has a little bit more information than most, no, I don't expect to see any redactions. I mean, you know, Devin Nunes and the White House collaborated to do something that had never been done before, which was to actually confirm that an American citizen had been subject to a FISA warrant, and to talk about how that process works, and of course to cast doubt on the integrity of that process, in my mind, without any evidence whatsoever. So everything in the Democratic memo makes reference to the exact same FISA warrant, so I am really worried that redactions
have to be redacted, and then you can say, aha, look, they're censoring this?
No, of course not. Again, everything in the Democratic memo makes reference to the exact same FISA application that the Republicans and the president decided to put out there and to describe.
But it is much more detailed.
It is much more detailed because we feel some allegiance to the truth. So unlike the Nunes memo, we actually have 38 footnotes so that when we make an assertion, when we make an allegation, you can look at the footnote and you can look up, in many cases, where the notion comes from. But no, the idea that somehow the Democratic memo is putting sources and methods at risk after what has happened, that would be simply a pretext to take things out that would... Look, this memo is a refutation of the Nunes memo. I will be astonished, and it may happen, I will be astonished if the Trump administration does something it's never done before, which is voluntarily allows a fact pattern that is not necessarily conducive to the president's interests out there. So I do expect redactions, but I am almost 100% certain that they will be political in nature.
The White House says that they're following the same procedures with the Democrats' memo as they did with the Republican memo. Do you believe that's accurate?
Well, if that is accurate, remember at the State of the Union speech, the president leaned over to a Republican and the Republican said, release the memo. And the president, before the process was over, said 100%. So when the president comes to my office and I ask him to release the memo and he says 100%, I'll agree that the process is exactly parallel.
Steve Bannon was supposed to testify in front of your committee today, now has another week to comply with the committee's subpoena. Corey Lewandowski has said he's not going to reappear in front of the committee without a subpoena. What are the next steps and where is this resistance coming from?
Well, so with Bannon and Lewandowski and some other individuals who worked or do work at the White House, we are involved in a very complicated and legalistic dispute with the White House. And when I say we, it's not just the Democrats, it's Mike Conaway and the Republicans on the committee about getting these people to come and testify, making room for legitimate executive privilege. And Anderson, as you know, executive privilege means that the president has an expectation that the advice that he gets or she gets from his advisors will not subsequently be made public. But the White House, in a number of instances, has claimed that executive privilege should extend into the transition before the president was even the president, and that it should extend to conversations that don't involve the president. This would be breaking new legal ground, and you know, we are in an argument with the White House over the nature of executive privilege on that basis.
All right, Congressman Himes, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Anderson.
Let's discuss this. Carl Bernstein, renowned journalist known for his Washington Post coverage of the Watergate scandal. Also, Ann Milgram, a former federal prosecutor and former New Jersey Attorney General, and the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers. Chairman Rogers, does it, the argument being made by Trey Gowdy and some other Republicans that the Democrats may have, put sources and methods in this with the idea that they will be redacted and therefore they'll cry foul. Does that ring true to you?
Well, I mean, whatever's in that
do?
memo, they're going to have to scrutinize. And if you recall, the FBI did say they didn't want the first one.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see if the FBI comes out and says, I really don't want the second one either, what the president would do. I will say they're going to have to scrub it. There may be some things as a part, as Congressman Himes talked about, the fact pattern that should not be disclosed, at least in the way that they've done it, and they may have to redact it. I don't know. I think that you're never going to get to the truth as long as both sides are shooting from the hip, and this is battle of the memoranda like I've never seen it, round 52. And I just don't think any of it's helpful. They're trying to conduct their political position through these classified memos and then release them. No one's going to win in that. And I'll tell you what, people will go to their corners. In America, if it's the Republican version's out, they'll say, I love it if you're a Republican. If the Democrat's out, they'll say, I love that because it's the Democrat version. And what's going to be the victim here, I think, is the truth.
Carl, what do you make of Senator Johnson coming now forward again with another story about these text messages, another interpretation?
This is a continued effort by Donald Trump, his White House, and his acolytes in the Congress of the United States to obscure a legitimate investigation into the conduct of the President of the United States, his family, his businesses, and his organization in the campaign, and having to do with the most serious business imaginable, the undermining of our elections by the Russians. That's what everybody's eyes should be on now, and all of this is distraction to keep your eyes, my eyes, off of it and to create the impression of a partisan equal battle between two sides here. Smear the FBI, the President of the United States, an authoritarian demagogue in the mold of Joe McCarthy. Smear the FBI just as McCarthy smeared the Department of the Army or the Voice of America or the State Department. We are watching a sideshow here about a president invoking treason. That's where we are.
It's so interesting, and that a lot of these things that are happening these days, it seems like it's just about getting a news hit or the first impression, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't hold up to the light of truth after several days, as long as a couple of days of stories have run that there's a secret society, and then it's revealed, oh, it's actually a joke, and the whole thing looks silly.
Well, the most amazing thing about Senator Johnson's report today, talking about, you know, it was this premise that the text messages related to the Hillary Clinton investigation. When that investigation was closed in July by then FBI Director Comey, on September 2nd, when the text messages were issued, the investigation wasn't open. It was not reopened until October. So a very simple factual timeline really does answer the question, I think, of it would have been, and we don't know for certain, we do know that President Obama saw Putin 3 days later, and that he said he did raise Russian interference in the election at that time. So it appears to me, just on its face, when you pull the facts out, to be just an incredible story that was put out about the